Listen carefully because this is the moment most people miss, and once it passes, it never comes back the same way again. There will be a point where he stops seeing you as just another person in his life and starts feeling something he cannot control, cannot explain, and cannot ignore. Not because you tried harder, not because you said the perfect words, but because you didn't. Because while others were trying to be chosen, you were simply being yourself. While others were performing, you were present. And that difference is what quietly changes everything. He won't announce it. He won't even fully understand it at first. But something in him will shift. The way he thinks about you, the way he remembers you, the way your absence suddenly feels louder than your presence ever was. And that's when it begins. Not a love story, not a fantasy, but a realization, deep, unsettling, and undeniable, that you are not someone he can easily replace, forget, or categorize. The question is, what happens when someone finally realizes your value at the exact moment you stop trying to prove it? Recognition in its truest form rarely announces itself with noise. It does not depend on grand confessions, dramatic gestures, or perfectly timed words. Instead, it unfolds in the quiet spaces where performance fades and something more honest begins to surface. When he starts to realize you are unlike anyone he has ever known, it does not happen during the obvious moments. It happens in the subtle ones he almost overlooks. It might begin in silence, a pause in conversation where he expects you to fill the gap, to reassure, to entertain, or to seek validation. But you don't. You remain composed, present, and unbothered by the absence of noise. That silence does something unexpected. It forces him to feel instead of react. And in that feeling, something unfamiliar emerges. He notices that you don't rush to impress him. There is no urgency in your energy, no underlying need to secure his attention. Where others may have tried to hold on to his interest through effort or performance, you simply exist as you are. This absence of striving creates a contrast he cannot immediately understand, but he feels it. It lingers in his mind longer than words ever could. Recognition begins to grow in these small, almost invisible moments. The way you respond without overreacting, the way you listen without trying to control the outcome, the way you walk away from what does not align with you without creating a scene or seeking approval. None of it is loud, yet all of it speaks. And that is where the shift begins. Because he is used to signals that are easy to read, clear expressions of interest, predictable emotional responses, familiar patterns of connection. But with you, the signals are different. They are not absent, but they are not exaggerated either. They exist in a balanced, grounded way that requires him to pay attention on a deeper level. At first, he may not even realize what is happening. He just knows that something feels different when he is around you. And even when he is not, your presence does not fade quickly from his thoughts. It stays quietly influencing how he reflects on his own behavior, his own expectations, and even his past experiences. He may find himself replaying moments that seemed simple at the time, a conversation that didn't follow the usual script, a reaction from you that didn't match what he anticipated, a boundary you held without explanation. These moments begin to connect, forming a realization that grows slowly but steadily. The absence of noise becomes the very thing that makes you impossible to ignore. Because where there is no distraction, there is clarity. And clarity can be unsettling. He starts to see that what he is experiencing is not based on surface-level attraction or temporary excitement, but something more grounded, something that feels stable, yet unknown. This realization does not demand attention. It earns it. It does not push itself forward. It reveals itself over time. And because of that, it carries a weight that louder connections often lack. He begins to understand that what draws him toward you is not something he can easily define or control. It is not about what you say, but how you exist. Not about what you do, but what you don't feel the need to do. And in that absence of effort, there is a presence that feels rare. Recognition, then, is not a single moment, but a quiet accumulation of awareness. It builds slowly, almost imperceptibly, until it reaches a point where it can no longer be ignored. And when it finally becomes clear to him, it does not feel like a discovery. It feels like something he has been sensing all along, now impossible to deny. There is a particular kind of shift that cannot be explained through logic, and yet it is deeply felt. When he begins to realize that something about you is different, it comes with sensation, a quiet, persistent feeling that something has moved within him. Even if he cannot point to when or why it happened, he may try at first to understand it in familiar terms: attraction, interest, curiosity. But none of them seem complete. This is where the confusion begins, because the mind seeks certainty, and this feeling offers none. It does not follow a clear pattern. It unsettles him in a way that is unfamiliar. He is used to emotions that are easy to navigate, but this is different. This feeling carries a weight that he cannot immediately place. It challenges the way he has previously understood connection, because it does not stay on the surface. It moves deeper, touching parts of him he does not usually examine. He may notice that he becomes more aware of himself around you. The way he speaks, the way he listens, the way he reacts. Things he once did automatically now feel more deliberate. It is as if your presence creates a mirror, reflecting aspects of him that he has never had to confront before. At the same time, there is a pull he cannot ignore. Even in moments when he tries to create distance, something brings his attention back to you. This tension between confusion and clarity becomes a central part of his experience. What unsettles him most is not something you actively do, but something you refuse to do. You do not chase. You do not try to convince him of your value. You do not shape yourself into what you think he might prefer. In a world where he has grown accustomed to subtle performances, your stillness stands out more than any effort ever could. You respond, you engage, but you do not reach. And that absence of reaching creates a space he is not used to experiencing. With you, there is no pressure, no hidden urgency. Your energy does not fluctuate based on his actions. This consistency creates accountability, because now there is no illusion to hide behind. He cannot rely on your effort to carry the connection. For perhaps the first time, he is faced with the reality that if something is to grow, it will require something from him. Your presence begins to feel less like something he can passively receive and more like something he must consciously meet through genuine intention. This is where things become uncomfortable. Because being real requires more than being liked. He starts to feel the difference between connections that were maintained through effort on the other person's side and this one, which exists without force. You simply have his attention without asking. And because you are not trying to keep it, he becomes more aware of the possibility of losing it. Your value is not something you negotiate. You do not lower your standards to maintain connection. You show him without words that your presence is solid, not fragile. Being with you would require presence, consistency, and sincerity, things that cannot be faked for long. At some point, the experience of knowing you begins to turn inward. He is no longer just observing you, he is observing himself. Your presence disrupts his usual ways of avoiding deeper reflection. Without you directly asking anything of him, his own patterns begin to rise into awareness. Avoidance, emotional distance, inconsistency. Your steadiness creates a contrast that makes his own behaviors more apparent. This awareness is not always comfortable, but it is undeniable. He begins to see himself more honestly than before. And with that comes the realization that being around you is not just an experience of attraction, but an experience of growth. Growth by its nature is not entirely comfortable. It asks questions he may not have wanted to answer. There may be moments where he feels the urge to step back, not because you have done anything wrong, but because what he is confronting within himself feels unfamiliar. Yet even in those moments, the awareness does not fully disappear. Once something is seen, it cannot be completely unseen. This creates a quiet internal conflict. Part of him may want to retreat to what feels familiar and easy, but another part is drawn to the possibility of something more real, something that challenges him to grow beyond his previous limits. What begins to unsettle him more than anything else is that this connection does not follow the patterns he has always relied on. Your presence does not respond to strategy. It does not reward inconsistency or partial effort. It requires awareness, conscious choice, and honesty. He is faced with a choice: remain within the comfort of what he has always known, or step into something that asks more of him. And while that choice may not be made immediately, the awareness of it does not fade. Because once he has experienced a connection that does not conform to old patterns, everything that does may begin to feel incomplete. There comes a point where what he feels can no longer be dismissed as temporary. It persists. Even in silence and distance, the impact remains. This persistence suggests that this is not just about emotion, it is about significance. Something about you has left an imprint that goes beyond momentary attraction. He begins to understand that what he felt was not just intensity, but depth. And depth, once experienced, is difficult to ignore. It raises the standard of what feels meaningful. In the end, this realization is not about you proving anything. It is about a quiet shift that cannot be reversed. A moment where something real breaks through his usual expectations and shows him a different standard of connection. One built on presence, depth, and truth rather than effort, illusion, or control.